We've been engaging with local residents about the issues they care about today, but putting it in the context of the history of the number of villages that kind of make up how Bristol North West has formed over many, many years. And some parts are particularly old. Henbury is one example of those. One of the issues that's come up from residents as a slight grumble sometimes is that the kind of walkways sometimes get overgrown. The iron bridge that connects King's Weston to Blaise Castle has not been fixed for a long time, but it is now being fixed. These walkways have historically been important to people. It's not just a modern issue, right?
No, not indeed. And I think, particularly related to the fact that if you go into the southwestern corner of St Mary the Virgin, the church there in Henbury, and then there's a little stairway. If you go down into that stairwell, you'll see a very short tunnel, which is Grade 2 listed, and that pathway then leads you into Blaise Castle estate as well, over Hazelbrook Bridge.
I had no idea that was there. I mean, I grew up in Lawrence Weston and I live in Shirehampton. I've been here my whole life. But the way Blaise Castle, King's Weston and Henbury are connected, I mean, it's quite a long route you can take from, down in Shirehampton up through King's Weston, or coming up from Lawrence Weston when the iron bridge is working, over the iron bridge, down through Blaise Castle, coming out through Henbury. These walkways, would they traditionally have been the way that people would have gotten around before the kind of main roads and pavements were built in modern times?
Well, prior to the transport methods that we got these days in terms of cars and so forth, people would have walked everywhere, and these paths would have been there for probably hundreds of years, but people would have been walking around this particular area for many thousands of years. We've got evidence of scheduled monuments, 2 scheduled monuments, an Iron Age hill fort and in Blaise Castle estate itself. The church goes back to the 12th century. St Mary the Virgin, Grade 2 star, listed church, astonishingly beautiful building. But so the pathways and the links through would have been sort of littered around the entire estate and around the villages. And we can obviously speculate that people would have been travelling through here for many, many centuries.
People will often today maybe go to King's Weston House to go to the coffee shop or walk the dog. They might go to Blaise Castle for the park with the kids, but will often probably drive and park, I suspect, yes, as opposed to doing these walkways. Do you think people should get out there and use these walkways and follow the connected routes all the way through? I
think it's an opportunity, isn't it? I mean, this is about providing. We've long known the benefits of the historic environment to our well-being, and I think during lockdown and through COVID, personally, I found it a wonderful experience, and I actually discovered this particular path and this particular site during COVID in a rather long run, I hasten to add. But what I found fascinating about it was that it links to a whole series of other parks, of other paths and routes around Blaise Castle and the estate and through the villages, and links into other parts of the city of Bristol and its wider environs. People connect to those things, they provide value, and people want to know how people used to live and enjoy the spaces in which they occupy. And I think it's evidenced by the fact that you're receiving commentary, and people want to make sure that those paths and that their environment is well managed and well looked after.
I mean, that's one of the reasons we're pleased the iron bridge is now being fixed, because that road junction is quite difficult for people. But if you're able to walk up to the iron bridge, or give that kind of continuous route through for people, I think it's quite nice that these routes are historically connecting the villages that make up Bristol North West. Some of those areas will still strongly see themselves as villages in terms of their identity. I mean, I would say this, I suppose, as the MP for the area, but I think this is quite unique, it's quite special. You probably don't see this type of continuous route, this heritage, this history very often in other parts of cities.
I think what's interesting about in this particular instance is you've got 2 very large estates. You've got King's Weston and you've got Blaise. One could equally argue, might suggest you've got down to Ashton Court as well, another large estate which is managed and owned by the city. And I think making those connections, it allows people to occupy those spaces, to live around them, to feel like they own them, and they do own them. It's their space,